Welcome everyone. This is the District Facilities Branch question and answer session. The last 4 sessions we've had since July, August, we have been talking about facility plans, the process, and basically from beginning to end. Today is a question and answer session, to kind of wrap up our year and looking forward to the new year and things like that. So with that, I will go through our and see if I can get this thing working today. Um, just introductions for anybody out there who doesn't know, we're obviously under KDE and our commissioner, Dr. Glass, with Associate Commissioner of the Office of Finance and Operations, Robin Fields Kinney. We're also under the Division of District Support with Che Ritter as our leader. And then when you get to the District Facilities Branch, which most of us are here today in attendance. So you may be hearing from Greg, James, Gary, Marcus, myself, and Teresa, who is still our newest member. She's been here, what, a couple of months now, Teresa? Time is flying, maybe 3.
Just shy of 2 months. Wait, October, November. Yeah, just shy of 2 months.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to welcome you aboard. How's that?
Well, that works for me.
And of course, Tanisha as our resource management analyst, and also I don't have on here, but Oksana, who is important part of getting all this together and keeping us going on a lot of different things as well. Presentation summary. If you've been to previous presentations, we've had a list of topics, but today is really about your questions and what they are. So feel free to provide questions in the chat. Oksana, is that where they would go to provide their questions for this process? Then
Yeah,
we can go through those.
They should use the Q&A section that we have in the meeting chat.
Yes, and do that. We'll have someone read those off, and we'll try to answer those as best we can. Also, when you provide that, you can also provide any kind of topics of interest that you would like to see in the upcoming calendar year, and we can maybe prepare for those in the future. All right. Does anybody else want to chime in as we start from Facilities Branch as questions may be coming in? All right. With that, I'm going to ask, is Tanisha, Oksana, who's reading the questions or taking a look at that? If you want
I can read them as they come on, but there's none yet.
All right. Well, this might be a very short meeting if we get no questions, people. Which I'm sure a lot of people like short meetings, but
well, John, I would like to, or for you to sort of summarize House Bill 678 and how it is being administered and what districts are still required to do by regulation and statute.
All right, thanks, Greg. I will try my best, and feel free to chime in if I miss anything. Of course.
Yeah, that wasn't in the form of a question. It was more.
Well, of course, everybody knows HB 678 was implemented in April of this past year as an emergency action by our legislators, and boards were required to adopt it. At this time, it is reported about 150 of 171 school districts have adopted HB 678. In a very quick nutshell, if you will, Section 1 of that House bill does allow that the adoption of that act. Districts can basically take it upon themselves to manage the construction efforts and basically not require KDE approval is essentially what it is. And you may provide a initial BG1 to provide for our information. But it is still the responsibility of the school district with help from their consultants and others, but ultimately the school district, that they still meet regulatory and statutory requirements of a project. So all the things that you would have typically provided for our review and the things that we request over time, a school board or a school district ultimately bears the responsibility to, which they already are as they send those things to us. It's just the buck stops at the local level, if you will, and does not continue on to our per our review. As part of that process. That's the first section of HB 678. Of course, anytime you have questions, whether you've adopted that or not, we are happy to help. We're here to help. It even says in the bill, HB 6, I think section 3 or what have you, that we will certainly take your questions and assist you along the way. The other components of HB 678 also deal with property and with the facility plan process. Both of those still go through our office, and you still review those. You still go through that process with the district facilities branch. So if your project requires purchasing a new property per the regulations, per House Bill 678, we would still come out, review that site, and go through that process like we always would. So you would need to call your project manager up and get that process started. So, for property, we would do that, regularly. And I'm not going to get into those details, but just know that process hasn't changed. And when you do a BG1 for that, you would, we would review those for site acquisition as they relate to the property process. Whether you've adopted 678 or not. The other component of that, which is not just property but facility plans as well, is we review those things and give an approval or denial within 30 business days of the receipt of a final and complete submittal, whether it's property or at the end of the facility plan process, at the end of your hearing when you get everything complete. We are required at the end of those two processes to give a complete or review within 30 count or business days. The process of facility planning also with 678, we do that like we've always done. There's no real change in that other than the 30 business days I just mentioned. From beginning to end. That's in a nutshell those items. One additional item that affects the day-to-day and construction for school districts is not just the capital construction facilities grant or the facility plan property, but also the last item is if you have federal funds on a project. I'm not reading 678 word for word here, but there is a note in 678 that, barring federal requirements, that a lot of federal dollars that we're finding out and know of require what is called an SEA approval. Those in the school districts may be very familiar with the terminology of LEA and SEA. So some of the vendors out there, like architects and design professionals, may not. It's a state educational agency or authority has to provide approval. So, when you send those BG1s in as a school district that may have adopted HB 678, you still have to get official approvals from us, and House Bill 678 still requires that. So primarily when I refer to that, I'm referring to ESSER because there's been a lot of money for ESSER, but that goes for any and all federal funds. So if you have some, USDA grant or something out there that might be out of the ordinary, but it's federal related, it would also apply to that. So those are the things on the day-to-day. Now there's some other things in HB 678, and I don't have any slide presentation for it here. And Greg, I know the state board meeting, they went through this. Robin had a good presentation yesterday. If people want to get online to see yesterday's board meeting, that talked about, the other provisions of House Bill 678 have dates of reviewing regulations and the like. And we've been busy doing that since 2021, since before, HB 678, I guess, was approved, if you will, earlier this year. So that process is also ongoing. And in June, we will be more of a formal presentation, if you will, at the state board. And then there's other dates for some joint committees and the like later in 2020, toward the end of 2023 in the fall. And like, I don't have the information directly in front of me. If any of my colleagues out there have that information or want to touch on that, feel free to do so. Does that work, Greg? You've got your hand up there.
I do. I would like to say that as a result of the ESSER funds, we have been directed to participate in monitoring of 14 districts this year, with the anticipation that more districts will be added next year. For those districts that are using ESSER funds for capital construction projects, we strongly recommend that you provide the documents normally associated with capital construction to us in FactPack. Would like to remind everybody that for construction projects in excess of $2,000, Davis-Bacon wage rates are applicable. There's, when those projects are bid, current wage rate determinations are needed to be included with the bidding documents, and there will be additional requirements for periodic review of certified payrolls and that kind of thing. This is well beyond our normal scope of work, but we are finding deficiencies related to Davis-Bacon in some districts. We're finding deficiencies related to compliance with procurement standards in some districts, and we would encourage you, if you are using ESSER funds, to be aware of those things. Thanks, John.
Those are excellent comments, Greg. Do be mindful, the $2,000 threshold is a federal requirement. And that is far lower than any of the state requirements that we have. And if you're using those ESSER funds, that does apply. So be mindful of that. Some of the, if you have questions about the wage rates, you can contact the Louisville office. With those districts that we have been doing monitoring work with, we send them that contact information. And you as a district, the LEA, the local educational agency, are responsible for that, not your construction managers, not your architects, but you, the LEA, ultimately have to have that responsibility. Think of it like tax season. If you have a tax prepared doing your taxes, ultimately you're responsible for your taxes, even if someone else is helping you do that work. So make sure you have access to that paperwork. Make sure that those things are being attended to. Even if you have some great and fabulous assistants out there from your design professionals and construction managers and the like, do know and understand at the end of the day that you need to have access to that information and some basic understanding that you do have all that paperwork in order should you have the need to provide that for any kind of monitoring or federal review needs and the like. Any other
John,
topics?
We have no questions at this time.
Thanks, Tanisha. It is 11:15. I've still got no questions. We start at 11. I'm going to cap this at 11:20 if we get no questions. Are there any other topics, Greg, or anyone from our group that you would like me to touch on, or you would like to comment on before we get off of here?
Yeah.
Should we not get any questions?
For those who are participating and have district facility plans that are due before June 30th of this year, we would strongly encourage you to be actively engaged in that process. We will have multiple DFPs that we will be administering between now and that date. And the sooner that those get in, the sooner we'll be able to turn them back around for you. The last 3 or 4 training sessions have focused on district facility planning. If we would also encourage you, they're on our website. Tanisha can tell you, or excuse me, Oksana can tell you where to find them. And we would encourage you to review those relative to the various actions that are required of the district and the LPC.
Just to add to that, Greg, I think in the state board, there was a slide that noted, I think 11 DFPs have been approved. And we had, at some point this summer, we had calculated approximately 74 districts were supposed to be trying to be complete by the end of this upcoming school year. That leaves about 63 of districts out there that are still not complete with that process. And, you know, there's going to be a huge, a huge review or backup time potentially if everybody starts sending those in all at the same time in the spring. So be mindful that if you're somebody that's near the end, go ahead and try to push forward. I know there's 1 or 2 districts I owe some information to out there right now so they can get their process completed. But yeah, and if you haven't started, go ahead and call your project managers up, get that startup packet information going and go from there. All right. Oh, I see a question, but I think it's in chat. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is the question. I accidentally forget to turn off the chat this time, so it's okay as long as we get them.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, it says, how does the waiver of the DFP affect the building assessment process?
How does the waiver of the DFP affect the building assessment process?
Okay, let me weigh in on that one, John.
Yes, feel free.
If the building assessment process that you're referencing is what we call KFIX, that is a statutory requirement to do KFIX. You know, if a waiver of a DFP regarding the 4-year cycle is what's being asked, you know, we would encourage all districts to have their KFIX information up to date. We will be providing a ranked report, an official ranked report to the legislature in the fall of 2023. You know, right now we've got roughly 75% of buildings included, if I can remember correctly. Oksana, is that right?
Buildings included in the rank report, we had 1,000 last time.
Yeah, 1,000 out of roughly 1,500. So percentage is close. So I hope that answers your question, Pam. Regardless of a waiver, the KFIX information should be up to date.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, that is a separate statute. That is a requirement for districts to provide that information. If they've already have that information recently done and kept up to date, then that becomes a non-issue with a waiver process. If it's a, you know, if no one's done that work, you know, how is a district determining how they move forward from a waiver perspective? You know, the two are separate from the statutory standpoint, like Greg mentions, but it's certainly useful information if a district is trying to determine next steps for their on what they want to do, whether they're doing a waiver or whether they're continuing on with a new DFP. Any other questions out there?
Marcus
Okay.
has his hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, Marcus.
If I may also expand further, there is a difference in how the data is used with regards to reporting to the legislature and what does the legislature do with the two sources of information just discussed. The information in KFIX culminates in a report that everybody refers to as the ranked report. And the legislature chooses to fund unique funding opportunities as they see fit from that. That's quite different than the DFP, which culminates in what everybody refers to as the unmet needs report. And if a district chooses to do a waiver, the district is also choosing to not update any needs. That also includes things about their buildings that in the time frame of the aged DFP may be appropriate to report, but you're choosing to intentionally not report that information in need. And those two fund sources that the legislature considers, they don't cross-reference each other. They don't pick and choose. They are considered, to my understanding, in isolation of one another. Would that be correct, Greg?
Essentially, Marcus. You know, when we do let me just say this, it is to the district's best interest to have their DFP up to date as well, because the reported need, an unmet need, goes into the SFCC calculation for their offers of assistance. So having your need up to date will result potentially in a higher offer of assistance.
Certainly the most current, high or low.
Yeah.
All right, we don't have any more questions in the chat nor in the Q&A column. So
All right.
one last call for everyone.
Yeah, with that said, I think we're going to close out. Thanks, Pam, for the question. Good conversation on the things that we did discuss about HB 678 and about waiver versus building assessment. If you've got anything, reach out to your project managers. If you want to see some of the previous live events we've done on facility planning, and your district is due here soon, feel free to look at those as well as you move forward on the KDE website under District Facilities Branch. Any last closing remarks, Greg, before we sign off?
No, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think we'll call it a day.